Rod, are you there? Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody else on my screen. Let's get a chance to get started here. I've given you my contact information on there. That email down there at the bottom is a brand new email. I've been doing what I'm doing for about 21 years. So let's go to the next slide. I have to confess that one of my heroes is LeBron James, and I love what is called the Stair. That piece of artwork there down at the bottom is when he's on the other side of the key and he's doing the tip off with you. That's what he looks like. And somebody managed to capture that in a painting, and I love it. The point is, you may be the artist, but somebody has got to want to buy the art. I would love to own the original of that painting. But that's the same thing with starting up a business. You are painting a story of your value to the market, and you've got to paint a painting that is complete in its message, okay? And so that is what we're going to talk about and how you do that to attract people to talk to you. When you do a startup, or you're working for an existing company, or you've got an idea for starting up a home business, and I'm glad you all told me about yourselves, it really isn't about the licenses, the taxes, the inventors, and all of that stuff. Eventually it is, but not to begin with, because here's the question. And this goes along with product development, okay? So Noelle, this is for you as well. If I build this, who wants it? You don't know the number of times I've sat down with a small company that was just starting up. They had worked really fast. They had their prototype. They were moving their way onto their final article for manufacturing, and nobody had gone to a customer to say, would you buy this from us, and what are you willing to pay? So what we know works is doing that from beginning. And I don't care where you go to an entrepreneurship program, whether it's Washington University, MIT, which is, I'm a former MIT Enterprise Forum chair, or any other kind of program like the University of California, San Diego, Rady School of Business, or UNM. You have got to start. The minute you start thinking about your unique idea about how you're going to talk to customers is whether or not they really want this, okay? The biggest thing we have to do when we contact them is listen to them. We're not selling. There's a thing where we actually do sell, but when we're asking them, are they interested in this kind of product, and bringing them along with us while we're developing it, you'd be amazed at the amount of input that a customer has to what it is that you design. I don't care whether it's your service for private parties to deliver cakes, or to figure out what to do with chelates, or to figure out what to do with water, or sensors for water and water quality. You've got to figure out, does somebody really want this? Okay. So what you're doing in the first year to a year and a half of your company is you're searching. That doesn't mean you're not also developing a prototype and looking for funding for that. Frankly, you do all that stuff at the same time. Your potential customers, however, have more to do with your final product than either you or your product development team even realize. So let's go on to the next slide. So what's a startup? I always find this an interesting conversation. Depending upon who you're talking to, it's, children aren't short adults, right? Well, startups are not smaller versions of large corporations either. I'm a former investor, and it was called an angel investor. And what I understand about it is that, because I do that really early on kind of stuff, it's a temporary organization, because eventually you do want it to do what's called an emerging startup, meaning you've now got some investors, you've got some grants and various kinds of funding, and you're actually got your first article, and now you're trying to get it out to market. Startups are not smaller versions of large corporations. If you're in a larger company, why would you want to even listen to this conversation? Because each time you come up with a new product, you're loaded with a lot of vision and faith that this is going to work. But do you know this is something that your customer wants? It's a roller coaster ride. It really, honest to gosh, is. We just got done with an NSF grant. Phil knows about this in New York, with a team that had 5 people on it. And I was explaining to Cecilia, 18 to 20 hours a day, no sleep, sometimes up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, talking to people all over the world, and getting that data, validating it, finding out if they were right in what they had to say, talking to users of our product, talking to the people who actually distribute it, talking to the people who manufacture it, talking to investors. We did 110 interviews in 6 weeks, no sleep. And I can honestly say to you, we found out everything we needed to know. It was incredible. That the community we were talking to opened up their arms and helped us. And that has been an experience of most of the companies I've worked with and most of the people that I've coached and mentored in NICOR. We startups have a lot of what I would call faith-based vision. Some of them Christianity or Judaism or followers of Islam, that fits into that as well. But what I'm talking about faith, when I say faith-based, is faith in leadership, product, and that we can do it. That's great. We still have to talk to our customers. Okay, so in your first mode, you're doing research and you're hiring people to be innovative. And sometimes you're hiring them with no pay, but stock options. You're seeking, and I love saying this, customers that are just as crazy as you are, because they get excited about what you're doing. The problem is if you don't get out of the building, and we'll talk about what that means when we're talking about the interviews, because right now we're doing a lot of this on Zoom, on Google Group, on Microsoft Team, and various other kinds of collaborative digital video solutions, okay, live video solutions. We're not necessarily getting into their offices, but I got news for you. If you're wondering whether that works, we had more startups in the state of New Mexico in 2020 than we've ever had, and we used Zoom. So you got to say to yourself, this is a tool that works. How am I going to use it? Let's go to the next slide. And for you, Jennifer, for you being at home and wanting to start up your business, you're going to use Zoom a lot. Okay. So the question is, what do we really want to start? Well, if I'm saying to myself, I want to start up new products that are applications of the various minerals or earth products or non-earth products that we're developing, what kind of business do I want to start up? Well, we design particle accelerators and have used non-earth products to mold it using 3D printing some of the internal parts of those particle accelerators. So what do we do with particle accelerators? We create signal. What do we do with the signal? We turn things on and off. Okay? Any more than that, I can't get into it right now. But am I creating value while delivering those products and services for others? I have to ask. Because particle accelerators physicists for a very long time were people that experimented with demonstrating what kinds of particles there are out there that can be put up to higher energy and what they can do. It's called directed energy. Now it has to actually be products. So who needs those things? And how are we going to deliver it to them? And how are they going to be involved in creating them? Which they're totally involved in creating them. Okay? It's one of the things we found out. So what is it we actually want to start? I'd like you to take a minute with your notes that you're taking and write that question down. What is it we actually want to start? Because I'm going to ask you that question. Okay? And how are we going to deliver value while, create value while we're delivering those products and services for others? For instance, if I specialize in making cupcakes, which I happen to have a passion about carrot cupcakes, is what are they going to look like? How am I going to treat the person that I'm doing them for? Am I going to send a photograph to them and show them them while I'm working on them? And am I going to show them what the packaging looks like before I deliver them? And am I going to invest in a lot of gold that I can sprinkle all over the top of my cupcakes? And when they arrive and they open up the box that they're in, is it going to be an experience? And then are they going to leave that box on the table and they're going to put my business cards out? What do I want to create as a result of how I treat my customer and the products I'm delivering? I have to ask them. If I'm going to deliver earth products to a company that is using those for devices they're building, such as lithium-ion batteries, how am I delivering it to them? What are they going to use it for? How do I show understanding of what it is they're doing? And how do I make sure they get it? It was the quality we're looking for. They're not having any problems. And on the tail end of that, am I also going to be involved in how lithium-ion batteries are used again once they're no longer appropriate for what they were being used for? Or how am I going to destroy them? So reuse and destroy. Am I going to be a part of that? And do I need to create a small company that follows up on our tails that is actually involved in ecologically safe distribution, reuse, and or destruction of lithium-ion batteries. Is it going to be part of our product line? So what is it we actually want to start, and how are we going to create value while we're delivering those products? So think about what it is you want to do, what you're writing your thesis on, what you'd like to launch into a company or a product that can be licensed. And those of you that are actually, nose to the road right there, creating companies and products within companies, how are you going to create value from the moment you contact the customer to you actually make this sale? How are you going to get them? How are you going to obtain them? And how are you going to sustain them? How are you going to get their attention and their awareness? How are you going to sustain them later on after they've bought some products from you? People have a tendency to think this is just in contracting. It's not. It's how they're treated. It's the product. It's your knowledge. It's your availability, and what you teach them about what they're doing while they're doing it, and how you learn what they're doing and value what they're doing. What, bottom line, is the problem your customer's trying to solve? It applies whether it's something to eat, something to wear, something to use, something to produce other products, and something that's a new technology. Always, what are they using it for? And how are you providing value? Any questions about that? Do you have an idea that you'd like to bounce off of me and say, well, what do you think of this? Well, I move fast, so let's move on. So I want you to think about how you're going to pull customers to you. We sometimes only think a customer is involved in the actual sale. They're not. They're involved from the time we get the idea and by us listening to them. Everybody likes somebody who listens to them, okay? We have to create a story, and we're going to call these use cases, and I'm going to talk to you about how do you develop use cases. What would you think, and I'll call on people, would be the application of a robotic arm? What would a robotic arm be used for? Rod, would you like to give us a try at what you think a robotic arm might be used for? I don't know whether you can hear me. Hello? Okay. Ashish, what do you think a robotic arm would be used for?
Lifting heavy things.
Lifting heavy things? Okay, that's one application. Jennifer, what do you think a robotic arm would be used for?
My husband said to pick up hazardous waste.
And that's a good one, actually. They're all good ones. Let's go on to somebody else. Who else would like to volunteer and say, what would you use a robotic arm for? Matthew? What would you use a robotic arm for? Noel, what would you use a robotic arm for in your business?
In our business, probably putting coal into bags.
Okay. Well, there's another use for robotic arms. There happens to be a large operation at the university, well, actually at MIT, and then there's another company that they're partnered with that is, have you ever seen the dancing robots, you guys? The guys that do the Macarena like that? You can just look up Macarena and robots online, and you will see some of the neatest videos you've ever seen in your life. And they also have robotic dogs for sniffing drugs and gases and all kinds of dangerous stuff where you can't send a person into. Don't look like a dog, but they kind of look like a dog. Robotic arms can be used to on a forklift to go up and take packages you don't want to disturb from a high bay and bring them down. They can also be used by somebody in a motorized wheelchair to bring something to their face to drink, and they can be used by small children who are in motorized wheelchairs who don't have use of their body from the hips up. So robotic arms are being used from everything from hazardous situations to distribution situations to use in personal use. And they're also used in space, and they operate differently in space than they do on Earth, because in space there is no vacuum, and so they can't do that vacuum thing. They got to operate differently. They got to operate with signal and devices. So we come up with an idea for a cool robotic arm, but we got to figure out what its application is going to be and what we're interested in and where we think we're going to make a difference in the market. Let's go to the next slide. This is something called a business model canvas. It's a BMC, and we have to give creds to a guy by the name of Alexander Osterwilder. Your assignment is to go to Alexander, and I'm going to give you his name at the end, Osterwilder, Osterwalder, and you're going to say to yourself, I'm not doing a business plan, but I'm going to do this kind of thinking for every new product we come up with. Basically, we start in the middle with the value proposition, and let's go on to the next slide. We start in the middle with the value proposition where that present is, and we ask the question for each market we're going after, what is the value? So when I was talking about the arm, I talked about 6 or 7 different markets. And so I would have this robotic arm that I'm designing have a value to each one of those markets. So for somebody in a wheelchair, it helps them with their skills of daily living and allows them to sit in a classroom or in a business meeting, have something to drink and not have to excuse themselves from the room because they can't move their arms, okay? Who is that customer? Well, I can guess it's a college student and or a younger adult, so somebody between the ages of 18 and 45. Who is actively building their career and needs to be able to reach out and get things while they're at work and in meetings, okay? How am I going to sell to that person? Well, I can put that product on the market and directly sell to them, but it turns out that's not what happens. When you look at somebody in a motorized wheelchair, that wheelchair has got something like 20 to 30 different components in it, all bought from different companies, and it's put together in one place by one of the world's largest distributors, a company called New Motion. They do most of the wheelchairs in the United States. There are small companies here in Albuquerque that do it, but they're mostly the guys that do it. And so I'm actually not selling to that customer that is the person in the wheelchair. I'm selling to those companies, and there's a whole group of another group of people that actually are the ones that determine what that person needs, gets the doctor to sign the orders, then it goes to the Medicare, and then it goes to the wheelchair company. Very complex market. So with your product, who makes the decision to buy the cupcake or the water analyzer or the drone or the new product, such as a new kind of lithium-ion battery? Who makes the decision to buy that? That's your customer right there. Somebody else may use it. I may use it, but the customer is the person who's going to buy that if I'm not buying directly from you, okay? So we start first with our brand new idea. From the moment we think of it, brainstorming what's its value, who are the customers, what kind of relationship and how are we going to sell to them, and we try to create that circle of value to the customer, customer needs it, customer has a pain that our products solves. Great idea. I'm working on it in graduate school, but what's the problem I think I'm solving? I need to now find out what the customer thinks the problem is. All the other things on there are key activities. Next, how am I going to get this thing done? And how am I going to get it into prototype? How am I going to get it into first article ready for manufacturing? By the way, when you get it perfect for market and you're ready to manufacture, it's called first article. Who are going to be my key partners? Wait a minute, there's a truck down there on a big arrow, Susan. You haven't told us what that is. That's a channel. Who's going to sell it? Who am I going to sell through? Who's already got customers? What piece of the action are they going to get? So therefore, cha-ching, what kind of revenues am I going to get? What's it going to actually cost? And what key resources do I have to be successful? This is how we have to think, whether we're working inside a large corporation or a startup. We have to ask these questions. And if you go online and look up this business model canvas, you will find a ton of stuff to explain what it is. Next slide. So customer market segments to whom you provide value. Oh, I'm going to start calling on you. In the beginning, when we start thinking about this, they're hypotheses. And we hypothesize like crazy, but now we have to go validate. That's why we go to the customers. So Darish, for what it is you're working on, who would you like to talk to about whether or not it solves a problem for them, excuse me. Who would you like to talk to first? If you could, dream your dream, this is the person I want to talk to about my product, or the company I want to talk to about my product. Who would that be? Would it be Los Alamos National Lab? Would it be Sandia National Lab, Air Force Research Lab? Who would it be? Would it be a private company? So tell me, Darish, who would you like to talk to about what you're doing?
Right now, I've applied for the I-Corps program and working on the technology And for that technology, I would probably go to, hospital industry people like, nurses and doctors.
Well, I'm going to add somebody else to that because I'm the former chief learning officer of the University of California, San Diego Health System. I did all the technology. You also want to talk to the supply committee. Matter of fact, you almost want to talk to them first because doctors and nurses can show you how they would use it in their work, but the person who makes the decision to buy is the supply committee. And most big hospitals like UNM have supply committees. And you're going to want to ask some of the people who are there in the room, do they know the chief nursing officer? Do they know the CEO of UNM? And you're going to find the answers yes. So you're getting a head start on I-Corps, aren't you? Phil, who would you go talk to? With the one you mentioned, there's a woman-led company that you're working with. Who would you want them to talk to?
Yeah, we our one was a sterilization unit. I don't know if you remember, and it was a new sterilization unit. It's completely different from the in situ water-based systems that are currently being used in the medical industry, so we went and spoke to about 55 different people, 55 different sectors of the medical industry. And we started with veterinarian surgeons and doctor surgeries. We moved into dental surgeries. We even went to San Diego Regional Hospital, which was a great experience because the lady there, whose name escapes me, she's been running the sterilization units for hospitals for 45 years, gave us, myself and Sarita, a tour of the complete operation of a sterilization system in the hospital unit, including from the boilers all the way up to the sterilization rooms.
Now, you're not, Phil, you're not a plant because I didn't know you were going to be participating today. What did you hypothesize about the value that this would bring to people? What did you hypothesize, did you think would be the value of your sterilization unit? Because it was quite marvelous.
Yeah, our sterilization unit was microwave based as opposed to the standard processes that are going now. And there's two big values to this. One is that in time, and time is always equals money, in that the standard type of sterilization is in a small surgery, for example, in a dental surgery or a doctor's surgery, would be about an hour and a half. And in a hospital takes in excess of 2 hours to 2 hours and a half to sterilize all the surgical instruments. With the product that we had, we can sterilize all those instruments within 1 minute.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you the next question, Phil. What did you find out was the major problem they were trying to solve?
The major problem they had was, no, I don't know, Susan, there were so many major problems. But I guess the two main ones was the time it took, because once you sterilize, you have to wrap the instruments, and they have to be transported to the operating rooms, for example, if we take a hospital. So if anything happens to them on the way, then you have to redo the whole process again. So if you do it if you can do it in a minute, that means we can actually put into an operating theatre a smaller version of our sterilization unit, which they can't have in a hospital now because it's so big. And if they drop anything in the surgery room, they can actually put it into the microwave and they can get it sterilized within a minute and it's back out again. And that can be critical for them. So it cuts down a lot of operating hours as well. We did a calculation, if you remember, on what the average cost of an operation was and how we cut down the operating hours in a hospital.
Okay, so you guys have heard the questions I've asked. What is the hypothesis about the value of what you're going to produce in your kitchen, your home-baked baked goods? Freshness, taste, control over quality, what is that going to be? And then who are you going to talk to find out and have people not always test what you're doing. You can do that, but what it is they would value in home baked goods. And you are going to change your hypotheses just a little bit about what they're looking for. Because I explained a company to you that does a great deal in presentation, and they cook out of their own home kitchen. And that presentation gets people to come back again and again. Obviously, it impressed me. Okay, let's go to the next slide because we got a lot to go. So who are your potential customers? When you think about who you want, think about the professional organizations you belong to, student organizations as well, national conferences you would love to go to and demonstrate what you're doing, websites that you've seen, LinkedIn. If you do nothing else after you're done with this presentation, will you please sign up in LinkedIn? And once you do, connect with me and then start looking at the profiles of the people that I'm connected to and what they look like and how they speak to the world. Because the first thing I'm going to do as an investor, the first thing that anybody's going to do is somebody who's a potential customer, anyone you contact, they're going to go look at your LinkedIn profile. Now, sometimes because we have security clearances, we can't talk about what it is we're doing, but we certainly can have an after work kind of profile and talk about ourselves as entrepreneurs. So please think about that. Facebook business, it costs some money by being an I-Corps. You can use some of the money that you get to start having a Facebook business site. And then look at Crunchbase. The university, I think, has a subscription to Crunchbase. Crunchbase and another one called Forrester give you almost everything about who's doing what. Forrester is interesting because it gives you the names of the executive team, their emails, and their phone numbers. And you can contact them right away. And they know they're in there. So you're trying to get through whoever's guarding them to talk to them. All right. One of the things that's important about this is all process that leads your thinking. What are the 3 attributes that that company or nonprofit exhibits? So Noel, in your case, when you think of a company you want to work with, what attributes do they exhibit? They're looking for innovation. They're looking to create a market. What types of products? How can you find out those things?
Yeah, they're looking for clean materials. They're looking for, like, for battery companies especially, right? They're looking for low metals contents, things like that. And the only reason I found that out I actually talked to one of their buyers, and the buyer, like this was like sort of a mistake I made, was like going to engineers first, and engineers like will not talk to you really. But then I talked to their buyers, and then once their buyers started talking to me, then their buyers hooked me up with some of their engineers, and then we started talking about like, okay, like we need materials to be cleaner, reduce the sand content, reduce the metal content, increase the organic acid content, and now we were able, at least with that product, right, we were able to now go up to a point where that company is evaluating our materials after we had this discussion. And we basically figured out that like we could provide them with cleaner materials than the rest of the world could, and so that was cool.
Ever thought about them asking them to send you their samples of what it is they've got, and you apply your technology to it, and you give them a report and results?
We have, but that's sort of been that's working up the chain. They have to go through a lot of red tape before they can send samples out to me. So I have less red tape to get samples to them.
I understand, but they can always come and visit and see how you do it.
Oh, yeah.
So what are 3 buying practices and professional practice behaviors, guys, that you think your clients have? Can they be observed in your customers? When you look at their website and you see what behaviors they show, what do they like to do? Where do they go? Where do they show up? Okay. For example, I'm going to go back to cupcakes again. Your buyers, where do they show up? Well, birthday parties, family events. Does that mean you're going to have a delivery service with a really neat looking truck that's going to buzz up to the front door and somebody in uniform is going to run up, ring the doorbell, say, here's your cupcakes. It's already paid for. Have a good time, and disappear? What is your delivery behavior going to look like? How are you going to keep their attention and please them that everything came perfectly? Okay. Narrow down to 3 specific people you would like to meet. You'd like to meet somebody in the New Mexico medical insurance industry. Who? You'd like to meet somebody in the worldwide distribution of metrology devices. Who? You'd like to talk to somebody who's into worldwide distribution of medical devices. Who? Who would you talk to? Okay. So you're going to do some research. How long should your research take? I'm going to tell you I'm a startup entrepreneur, and fast is my middle name. Quickly is my second middle name. And I'm going to leave you in the dust behind me is my motto. No more than 2.5 to 3 days. Okay, you will learn over time by talking to your clients in the interviews. New slide. This is an interesting thing. In talking about who we're going to approach, we start thinking about an archetype or archetype profile. This was for a project that I was working on, launching this company that has a central communication device for wheelchairs that sends out signal to do certain kinds of tasks. And we started thinking about, well, who's our archetype? It's somebody between 18 and 25 years of age to begin with, that already has a passion for technology and has many different kinds of jobs that they want to perform. This is for somebody who wanted to be an actress. And we didn't use her real picture. We used a meme and that she created. And we interviewed her and talked with her about everything from her need for independence from her family to what it was she wanted to do. So when I sell my product, describe who you think your customer is going to be. And you heard Noel say, I'm not sure it's an engineer. I think it's the buyer. And then they introduced me to the engineer. So maybe it's a partnership of inside corporations of buying, of purchasing, and the engineer. So who's my archetype customer? What's their behavior? How often do they buy? Are they seasonal? Do they have times when they more apt to have funding? Where does their funding come from? What are they worried about? Find out those things. See that question in there? What do they now use to solve the problem? And this is interesting because you've got to know what they're using to solve the problem. I go to Costco, I buy my cupcakes there. I go to worldwide distribution companies in Europe for my metrology devices. What pains do they have in their job? How do they prioritize those? I hate to-do lists because everything's on there and they have no priorities. So I like to put priorities out on the side using a different color ink on my computer. I like to draw my lists, okay? So what pains do they have? What are they trying to solve? What's going to get them a better position in the market? Prioritize that. Who influences the adoption of this? Well, Noel told us, he said the buyers influence the adoption. But is, like in a hospital situation, are the supply and distribution committees, do they influence it? What channels? Now, this is really interesting. What channels are this person already buying from? And am I going to have to go through a distributor, or I'm going to be selling straight to them? Okay. And the person I'm talking with likes to be able to tell me about themselves. Everybody does. Do they have personal goals? I want to be able to improve how we do what? These are the kinds of things we're asking questions about. And this may sound bizarre and strange, and nobody is going to answer these questions, but that's more about you right now than it is about me and what I know works, okay? Let's go on to the next slide. So we create a list of potential markets and customers, and we ask, who are they? Why are they important? What value does your product provide to them? To the user, the manufacturer, the distributor, if that's involved, okay? So we start guessing. These are all hypotheses. And we want to go to their websites. We want to look at their LinkedIn profiles. We want to see if they're on Facebook Business to find out what that has to say about what they're doing. If they're a publicly held company, they have to do a report to the Securities Exchange Commission every year. They're going to have an annual report out there. Go take a look at that annual report. You're going to need to do some research. You're going to go to one of the 2 sites that I talked with you about, including Forrester, and you're going to go to the UNM library. And if you don't have a card right now and you're an alum, you're going to go get one. It's not that expensive. And you're going to do some research, and you can do it virtually, okay? You're also going to want to find out who says they're working with them. You just put in their name and find out what websites they show up on. A lot of times companies will put up logos with the companies that they're working with. And so you'll find out another way of getting in through the door. Let's go to the next slide. What are your value propositions? Now, this is where I want you to do some thinking and writing. You've got in mind a product, an idea, and you want to say, I am solving a problem for the following community of people. You want to say what's unique about what it is that you're doing, and what are the bundles of products and services that we're offering to each customer. So we worked on an particle accelerator and injector for certain kinds of heavy molecules for proton therapy, actually for a neutron, something called a neutron generator. What was our value? We sat down and we found out from talking to the customer, we weren't radioactive, their device was. We could give them a rapid supply of electrons in no time at all, like less than a nanosecond. The device was very small, didn't increase the footprint of what they were building, and it was very powerful. And they hooked it up, tried it, it worked, they wanted it. So this is the kind of thing you have to see if you can do when you're in your prototype stage. Is there somebody you can sign an agreement with and actually show them and demonstrate? Now, one of the things that sometimes people do when they're doing validation of the customers is they'll put up a temporary website, one that just says, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. If you'd like to talk with us about what your favorite flavors are and what you buy mostly from the bakery, please tell me and send me a note. I'll keep in touch with you when we launch. People do this kind of viral website, initial, not pretty, not gorgeous, not the most perfect thing in the world, to get customers excited, and they announce it on everything from LinkedIn to Instagram, Snapchat, and some of the new Chinese collaborative websites that are out there. Create a value prop for each market. So I have to be able to say, this is who we are. This is what we do. I'm not giving away my technology. And this is the problem it solves for each member of my market. Okay, let's go on to the next slide because we're going to kind of get this a little more granular. This is how you put together a value proposition. So I've given you a template, and you can take what I've got in there out of there, because Cecilia is going to be launching this by tomorrow sometime on our website at UNM, and you'll be able to get the presentation and go through it. So you've got a cookbook here that you can use. But for every product you're thinking of launching, who's it for? Describe them. Who wants their need? What are their wants and needs? What's the problem they're trying to solve? And it provides them with a simple, give simple names. Don't start describing all the technology. And sometimes we say it's unlike any other devices on the market, but we don't know that until we've done customer research. You can never tell a potential investor, nobody else is doing what we're doing, because the investor's going to look at you and go, oh, really? That's naive. They want to know what else is out there doing what you're doing. Are you doing a different version of what they're doing? How is what you are doing unique? You've got to know that. Otherwise, why are you building a company? Why are you telling people license my technology? Okay. So here's an example of how to do it. And you're going to do that in your spare time when you have nothing else better to do. No, not true. You're going to make it a priority for what it is that you're working on. Let's go to the next slide. So what are your objectives for your first customer interview? Somebody tell me what your objective was in coming here to this workshop today. Ariana, what was your objective in coming?
Just to be a little bit more aware of like ways to communicate with potential customers in the future. Right now, I'm not necessarily interacting with customers, but I know in the future in different jobs, I'm going to have to. So I just want to be a little bit more aware. So just how to create those relationships and foster them.
Can you tell me what the value proposition is of working with Ariana Nava? What value does she bring to the UNM Innovation Center, Rainforest Innovation Center right now? You didn't think I was going to ask that question, did you? But what value do you bring as an intern?
So I do help create like mailing campaigns. So I'm looking at contacts for different companies. I'm not sending them out personally. I'm helping find those for different people at it. And I'm also doing like non-confidential summaries and helping with different innovations that do come to the university, helping just wherever I could help, honestly.
So I can say that Ariana Nava is a student at the University of New Mexico who is an intern for the Rainforest Innovations Program, who offers critical thinking that helps you decide who you should be contacting to get them, help them be aware of your programs and the funding opportunities. Would that be accurate?
I think that helps explain it, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about having a value prop, because you're going to use that in talking to people. Okay, you can't just be there. You got to be able to describe it and what it is. All of you need that. All right. Customer discovery is about creating a relationship. It's kind of odd that in the olden days we would, keep everything deep, dark, and secret. We still do. We get patents, but frankly, there's somebody else out there maybe with the same idea you have, and just a different version of it. So you really need to have people who are curious in what you're doing and really want to support what you're doing. And I can't even begin to tell you, Dr. Juan Faria Briceño has worked on a metrology device that looks at on the nano level at thin films to make sure that those thin films are properly structured. And thin films are used in the computers you're sitting at right now, your cell phones, your TV sets, all kinds of medical devices. And what he discovered in doing it is the industry was pitching out some 60% of the film that they were developing. He's developed something that helps them reduce that amount of call it spillage, if you will, detritus, stuff we don't need and can't use that costs them money, by taking a look at the film at a nano level to see whether or not it actually is structured the way it's supposed to be. Okay, and it's also used for chips and things, semiconductors and things like that. So you research your potential customer. To start, you ask for an informational interview. And one of the things you can do when you're a student or you're in I-Corps says, I'm a student, I'm in I-Corps. What do you do if you're working for a big company? I'm responsible for product development. We like to focus on our industry and their needs and problems that they're trying to solve. And frankly, I would love some of your time to sit down and just talk with you and help me learn more about your market. Be surprised at the people who say yes. One person that I worked with who is now working at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, if this isn't supposed to work, he sent out 100 emails with this kind of an introduction on LinkedIn and got 60 interviews. Most of them with the CEOs of the companies he was contacting, and they were big European companies. So don't ever say something's not going to work. You got to keep on trying. You're going to share your value proposition and your use case. Let's talk how you do that. Next slide. So here's some more things about what you're doing during the course of the interview. You're presenting your value prop, you're presenting your value proposition, you're creating awareness, and you're asking them for the names of 2 more people you can talk to. People find this the hardest thing in the whole wide world. Once you get used to doing it, it just slips off your tongue. And that's how we got as high as we did with this last product we took through National I-Corps. Let's go to the next slide. Why talk to your customers? Who can tell me why you talk to your customers? Somebody just, we've all been talking. Who can tell me why you talk to customers now? Rod, I don't know whether you're on the phone with us. Can you tell me why we talk to customers? Jennifer, why do we talk to customers?
Because they're the people buying our product. We want to know what they want and what they desire, so that way we can cater to their needs.
Absolutely. And when you think about the difference between something they eat, something they wear, something they buy for entertainment, or something that they are using for their business, something they're using for a highly technical process, we still need to know what they're going to use it for. Okay, that helps us with our marketing and everything else. That bottom thing on this slide, that's the most important thing in the world, guys, is the one about customers will listen to you, but first you have to listen to them. So let's talk about how we do that. Next slide. So how would you change the statements I've got here? I'm going to say them out loud. You think about how you might change them. I call up Noel and I say to him, I'm developing a product that lengthens, the product's in cells. There are lithium cells, and when you put them together in 8 cells in a small battery, the battery is safer, works longer, and destruction and shredding the battery is easier because you actually don't have to do the whole thing. You can replace one of the cells. So I'm asking for advice and expertise, not money or space. If I said that to you guys, what would your reaction be? Think about another way I should ask that question. If I say, I'm wondering, how does your business or product make money? We're looking for advice for our business model. How do we say that differently? And then we say to them, who's your competition? Well, nobody wants to say who their competition is, okay? And if I'm calling another company that's doing something similar to what I think I'm doing, and I want to find out how they find their place in the market, I need to figure out how to ask these questions without asking them. How do we do it?
So, okay, you're talking about batteries. Say you called a cell phone company and you say, I have XYZ cell phone. I'd like to know, how long is your battery last? What is the length of time that the battery's used? How do you recharge it? Anything that has to do with the battery itself that because that's the product you're wanting to provide. So
Okay.
I would do that.
That's an interesting way of approaching other people who sell the product. And now when your name's known out in the industry, that's a little hard to do, but it's another way of talking to people who sell products that claim to do certain things and ask them about various components of it. How does the product make money? How can you find that out? Because sometimes money is in the installation and the service. It's not in the product itself. How do you find that out? Well, how do you ask that question? Anybody?
For me, that's hard because I have another lady who does cookies and she's got a website and I thought it was an Etsy page. So I just simply asked her I told her, I said, that's really unique that you're using Etsy to sell your cookies or promote your cookies. How well does that site work for you? Are you getting orders from there? Is it consistent orders? And then she told me, oh, it was a website. And yes, I do get orders on there. And it's an easy way for me to filter customers over to it. So say she has somebody, she posts something on the Facebook page or Instagram, then she puts her link to her website where they can order the cookies from. And I thought that was really unique because I'm still in the investigation phase. So I'm kind of probing her in a curiosity. I'm curious as to what she does without making it seem like I'm looking for specific information. So I'm trying to keep it as general as a lighthearted conversation and see what I can actually pull from her.
And you've learned some very important things, that there are other social media websites that you can go to give people to give you information. For example, on a tech product that I worked on with a company just recently, we put something on Twitter that says this is a survey with only 3 questions in it. And basically what it was asking them, were they willing to talk with us about a product that we were thinking of launching and giving us some feedback on how it might be used, and the problem that it solved, and whether or not they might be willing to buy it. And during those conversations, we were able to ask, what are you doing now? And how much are you currently paying for that? What would you prefer to pay? We actually were able to ask those questions pretty directly. So you don't shy away from asking this. All they can do is shut you down and you move on to the next interview, okay? Depends on the value of that interview to you if it's actually somebody you want to sell to. And sometimes we have to go around in a circle before we get to the center and decide to get to the people we actually want to sell to. Okay, let's look at our next slide. There's something called a pitch. Some of you may have one. A pitch component contest is something where a bunch of people get together with products. They've got 90 seconds to stand up and pitch their product. And there really is a formula to these things. And there's really a way of doing them. I don't pitch people on what I'm doing by saying a lot other than asking a question. How many of you wondered how to start up a business and where you start? What do you do when you're in a startup position? How do you figure out to get fully committed investors and customers? Well, I work with, and then I talk about the 540 companies I've worked with. It's a really quick pitch that has a problem that you're solving. How does your business make money? Who is your competition? What's your unique value proposition in comparison to the competition? And what's the market for your product? And be prepared when you're done with your 90 seconds for people to ask you questions about it. You need to have some kind of 90-second pitch that's going to be in this interview you're doing in customer service. And those of you that are in ICOR are going to hear me coach on this. So think about this 90-second pitch. Those of you that are already in business and sales, you think you've got a great pitch. Give that pitch to some people who are friends and ask them what they think, because you do want to get their attention without giving away the technology. You don't have to talk about the details of how it works. We're going to talk about, by the way, of asking for an NDA. You don't ever ask for one of those things. Let's go to the next slide. So most of the time when people hear us talking about what we do, unfortunately, this poor gentleman is doing exactly what they hear, blah, 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 blah. Okay. just know that if you pitch somebody, don't let it go any longer than 90 seconds. They're going to cut you off. Okay. Now, is anybody willing to pitch me as if I was a potential customer for you or an investor? Who wants to give it a try? I want to get as much out of this as you put in, and we've got, it's 12 o'clock. Oh, goodness. Well, here's the deal. There is a video of me doing one of these presentations on how to do a pitch on the UNM Rainforest Innovations website. I'd like you to take a look at that. Cecilia, can we go to the end of the presentation? Okay. I've got some resources for you here. They're books. You can get them on Kindle audiobooks, or you can get them in a Kindle book and look at them electronically. One of them is called A Business Model Navigator. Now, that's done by Oliver Gassman and Frankenberger. It's really interesting. There's like 55 to 75 different models in there that talk about how you sell, how you bring your product to market, how you give things away at a freemium, how you then begin to charge for them. And so there's different models in there. It covers every kind of business on the face of the earth. Please note, we will change what we're doing. The Art of the Start is by a friend of mine. His name's Guy Kawasaki. Guy Kawasaki was employee number 5 of Apple, first known as Macintosh. He is just amazing at how talking his way in this book. It's like having a conversation with him. He talks exactly like he writes about how you get a product to market. Business Model Generation, that one talks about the business model canvas that I showed you. And the Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank. Steve Blank has a website where if you just sign up, you can see all his videos for free. I'd highly suggest you take a look at the part that has to do with how you do customer interviews. So the Startup Owner's Manual, Steve Blank. There's a company by the name of Udacity, UDACITY. I think you have to have a membership for that one, but he also has his videos on his own website, and you can look at them for free.